Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports, live from our Pontchartrain Production Studios. I'm Eric Asher. Tonight we talk about all the home teams, New Orleans Saints, the LSU Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave. If we got some chance, we'll talk about the big prep game of the week, Newman versus Country Day. Yeah, you heard me say Newman versus Country Day. Some pretty good quarterbacks that are coming up in that game. And we got two great analysts to break it down for us. Garland, Gillen of Fox 8 Sports, Andrew Doak of Channel 4 Television. Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. Garland, we'd like to always start off letting folks know a little bit about what's going on at your respective stations. Why don't you take it first?
Well, first off, congrats on the new dig.
Oh, yeah.
I was at Causeway.
Right.
I was in Elmwood.
Yes.
Causeway, fighting traffic was brutal.
Yes.
Elmwood got a little better.
Right.
Now, Fox 8 studios are a minute away.
Right.
It literally I left my office, came over here. It took me 1 minute to get here. So thank you for the new digs here. I love it. Fox 8, I talk about it a lot. We have 3.5 hours of programming a week. So from Monday with Black and Gold Breakdown with Deuce to Wednesday, Sean Fazan, and then break down the next game on Game Plan. Friday night, we got Fox 8 Football Friday. Obviously, prep. We got the hour tailgate on Sunday. We don't have that this week. But then on Final Play on Sunday night, we have a live show, post-game reaction from Coach Payton. The locker room, I guess, we would say Drew Brees, but you might hear from Teddy Bridgewater at the podium. So we got a fun week of broadcasting of different sporting events there. Obviously heavy on football. Pelicans start next week, but in my blog, Football Food, I put up a new post today about Coach Payton. And we talked about this before. We talked about this last week. I knew the Saints had a chance against Seattle because you had Coach Payton as the, some people consider him an offensive genius, but he had a whole week to prepare with Teddy Bridgewater. So that's the whole point of my column was that he had a week to prepare for the Seahawks with Teddy Bridgewater. Against the Rams, they put him in a bad situation getting out there, but he had a week, and he's got the same thing going this week against the Cowboys.
Beautiful. Andrew, welcome back to the show.
Yeah.
Talk about Channel 4, what you guys do at Channel 4 Sports, and you guys, much like Fox 8, have an app as well.
Yeah, no question. WLAE-TV app. We try to use it all the time as much as we can, especially during football season when there's so much going on betwing the Saints and LSU, Tulane, and then this is like my favorite time of year because now you got basketball right around the corner, and when the Pelicans are starting up, the last several years there's been some uncertainty coming into a season, but obviously this year, no matter how they finish, the buzz is going to be unreal. Yeah. But yeah, look, we're always trying to put together different types of content that can tell a story in a different way. We started a new segment, 4 takeaways, that we like to do after the Saints play the day after every day. And we have kind of a swipe board where we're able to break it down in a different way and kind of visually. I'm a visual learner. Yeah. And so we visually able to break down stats and show how it affected the game and whatnot. And then, of course, 4th Down on 4 on Sundays. That's one of those more in-depth shows where we're able to break it down. And, the sports fan that really looks to be able to get their fix on diving inside the numbers and whatnot, that we like to break it down with the time that we have. So exciting week ahead, even though, Tulane and LSU obviously have a bye week and get to be able to rest up. But, a lot of eyes are going to be on Sunday Night Football, and that's going to be a really, really fun game inside the Dome.
No doubt. Guys, I teased it. Can I go there first? because rarely do we ever go high school first.
All right. Sure, why not?
Newman Country Day. I have not seen these guys play. You guys both cover high school as well as the pros and college. Talk a little bit about this matchup this week.
Right. Justin Ibieta and Country Day. Ibieta is going to Tulane next year as a verbal commitment. Arch Manning is only a freshman. He's only had 3 starts so far, but in those 3 starts, he racked up 5 touchdowns last week against East Jefferson. Against Bonneville, he had 4 touchdowns in the first half, 2 rushing, 2 passing. In his opener against Lusher, he had 3. So he's racking up the numbers. Country Day, this is a big rivalry. I know a lot of people are like, Country Day Newman, but this game has gone back and forth. Last year, Country Day mounted this insane comeback in the fourth quarter. Ibieta threw 3 touchdown passes to win in the fourth quarter. It was wild. That was at Isidore Newman's campus. This game is a neutral site. It's going to be at Ullman Stadium, which is perfect because Justin Ibieta is going to be playing there for the next 4 to 5 years come next season. Newman's 3-0. Country Day's 2-1. Country Day's only loss, though, was against De La Salle, which is a heavyweight in Class 3A. Country Day is only a Class 1A school. And that's one other interesting note in this game. Country Day dropped down this year. Newman stayed in 2A, so they're not going to meet again this year. They've always had the chance they could meet in the state playoffs. Not this year. This is it because they're going to be in separate classifications when it comes to the state championship game, which for private schools is not in the Dome this year. They're still fighting over where it's going to be.
Yeah. You've seen both these quarterbacks. What do you think?
Well, Justin Ibieta is a special athlete, and I know he probably doesn't go against some of the same competition that you see guys go against, like when it comes to Carr and Warren Easton and some of the other schools, but he has some serious arm talent, and he's a really, really big guy, and he's a multi-sport athlete. I mean, I saw them play in the state playoffs last year in basketball, and he was a really good player. I think he played center for the team and was really athletic. So, he's a guy who knows how to play multiple sports and athletics, and being an athlete's just in his genes. But as far as Arch Manning's concerned, there's a lot of buzz surrounding this guy, and I think for a normal 15-year-old, the expectations are through the roof, and I can't imagine what it's like to be in his shoes and have the family that came before him, whether it's Archie, whether it's Eli, whether it's his own father, Cooper, or Peyton Manning, obviously, but people expect him to be the next Peyton and Eli Manning, and it's almost like you got to slow down a little bit because this guy, was in 8th grade last year. I mean, he's just a freshman this season. So I think physically, for a 15-year-old to be 6'2" and to be able to throw it the way that he does, he's unlike other 15-year-olds. And I know that they're, even when I tried to interview him after the game, I talked to Nelson Stewart and asked him first, can we interview him? They said, we're not allowing freshmen to interview right now, but I'm sure that they kind of, in Arch's perspective too, they kind of want to inundate him and protect him right now because he's such a young kid. And I know that I wasn't ready to go in front of the camera at 15 years old, and I'm 28 years old now, and I'm barely, ready to go in front of the camera. But point is, the guy is a really special player, and so watching these two quarterbacks, even though one, and Ibieta is a senior and Arch is a freshman, it should be a really fun matchup to watch, and two offenses that are going to be really explosive.
Guys, I'm just going to throw a crazy question out there. Two quarterbacks coming out of high school or in high school at the same time in this city that maybe have a chance to go on to play the pros. I'm going to go back to when I was in high school.
All right.
John Forcade, Bobby Hebert.
Okay.
Can you think of any more?
That
were at the same time, that two guys that may come out of programs out of the city of New Orleans or in South Louisiana that are going to go to the pros.
All right, that are at the same time. Now you're making me think, because I know Ryan Paralou.
That's more of a Garland question.
Yeah, I know Ryan Paralou, right? But he was in his own stratosphere. Eli was in the late 90s there. Peyton was in the early 90s. Right. I couldn't throw it.
I mean, just off the top of my head, I would think that's got to be pretty close, right?
Well, I will say this. T.J. Finley is in Ponchatoula, which is our viewing area. Right. He's one of the top quarterbacks in America. Yes. So
throw him in there too.
Yeah, you could throw TJ in there too. Now they Brother Martin had a fantastic defense and shut him down last week. But TJ is going to be on LSU's campus next December. He's an early graduate.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so you kind of put me on there on the spot. I can't think of any other names at the same time that were quarterbacks.
I'm just off the top of my head, and I'm just showing how old I am as well.
But in Andrew's point, Ibieta is a star pitcher. His dad played baseball at Tulane, so it's in his blood. And with Arch, he's got three of the best coaches, obviously, that are right around him. And Nelson Stewart is the offensive coordinator and the head coach.
Yes.
You know, he played at Tulane. In the summer times, he works with his uncles, Peyton and Eli. And also David Morris, who does QB Country, lives in Mobile. David Morris was Eli's backup quarterback at Ole Miss. Arch does a lot of work with him. So he's got a lot of people that he can lean on that have a lot of experience there. And in the spring, to show you how serious Arch is about football, he gave up baseball this past spring and just focused on the weight room. He gained 20 pounds just in the spring. So he's up at 185 right now. So he's just gonna, he's gonna be around for a little while. We're gonna be saying his name a ton. I mean, we're only 3 games into this thing. Okay,
That's the crazy thing. We led the show with them.
I've been knowing. Trust me. When he was in 5th grade, 6th grade, I heard about all his talents on the middle school level. We, in his 7th grade year, we shot his district championship game there. It was the first time he had ever been on television. We showed they beat Christian Brothers. So he's been on our radar for a while. I live uptown, so I know everything going on around there, and he's definitely been on our radar.
And for the record, I can gain 20 pounds, and it's not in the weight room. It's pretty easy. That's no doubt. And let's talk about the Saints. 2-1, 33-27 winners over Seattle, up at that House of Horrors, CenturyLink. Let's talk about Teddy Bridgewater first. I mean, look, that is really rough going into the game for Drew Brees, having to take over for him against the Rams and everything else that went wrong there. But I thought the game plan was just genius by Peyton, because he didn't put a tremendous amount of pressure on Bridgewater to win the game for him. Now, again, you had mentioned it before when we were talking about before the show, the fact that they got a special teams touchdown and a defensive touchdown really helped them in terms of the offense. But utilizing Kamara, utilizing Thomas the Stars, but also the short passing game, in which you knew would probably be inclement weather at CenturyLink.
Yeah, and if you look at Teddy's numbers from 2015 when he was at the Vikings, those are the numbers that he's putting up every week. He was throwing for 150, 160, 170, 180. This is the way it's going to be with Teddy. It's going to be short throws, just don't make mistakes, manage the game. And I'm sure they expect the same of him this week there. I will say this, Sean Payton definitely worked on the Seahawks last week, saying that, Taysom Hill might be the starter. And then he has 4 offensive touches in the entire game, his lowest output in a year. So Sean Payton definitely buried the Seahawks in film to prepare for 2 quarterbacks, and Taysom only played a 4 offensive snaps. So I give it to Payton to drown the Seahawks in film.
What are your thoughts on how Teddy performed?
Well, I said
and
it
the
earlier,
game plan as well.
Sure, and I said it earlier in the week. I thought he did a great job managing the game. And I think a lot of times when you get hit with the game manager, it becomes a negative connotation. We've done it with Alex Smith and other quarterbacks like that who we don't really see in that high of a regard. But in this situation, especially as the backup quarterback, you're filling in for Drew Brees. That's all you needed to do. And I thought he did a good job of being able to do that. He almost had a couple of interceptions on some scary throws, but at the end of the day, wound up with no turnovers. And that was one of the biggest keys, I thought. But you're right. As far as the short passing game was concerned to Michael Thomas, they scored a touchdown near the goal line on 4th and goal, where they had one of those classic Mike Thomas, slip under type routes where you have, a slot receiver blocking and he's just able to get into the end zone. You also saw him on a lot of slants. But I thought how they used Kamara and how they utilized him was maybe the key to that game. Kamara was a superstar, and honestly, I feel like the guy's greased up before the game because he gets out of tackles in an unbelievable way. But he had 25 touches, and earlier in the week I told people that's the most touches that he's ever had in a game that ended in regulation. His all-time high was 31. That was against Atlanta last year, but that on the road. But that was a game that ended in overtime, if you remember. So in a regulation game, that was the most he'd ever touched the ball. And Sean Payton had a plan going into that game. We want to make Teddy feel as comfortable as possible. And how do you do that? You get screen passes to Kamara and just let him work his magic. And I thought they were able to do that. And as you mentioned, though, that's why I'm a little bit worried about this week, not only because Dallas is playing so well and that offense is kicking into high gear, even though they haven't played too many tough teams just yet. So the verdict's still out on them. But the way that offense is cooking, it gives me a little bit of time to just reason to pause and wonder how good that team is and if the Saints can handle them because of who they've played so far. But I think that as far as the Saints are concerned, they just got to go in with the same type of game plan and hope that maybe they can get another defensive touchdown or punt return to be able to spark them. Talk
about Kamara, because that was an interesting point that Andrew brought up about touches. Ingram's not here anymore. Cook has not proven that he can be a playmaker for this team yet. You want to utilize your playmakers. He is a unique player, but yet you got to worry about the 16 games and overusing and possible injury. But, I mean, much like what happened at CenturyLink, you almost got to give him the ball. You got to at least get it in his hands. Talk about his performance on Sunday, but also talk about what we can see in the future in terms of touches.
Yeah, you got to give it to the hot hand. That's why I know everybody's saying give the ball to Latavius Murray more, but Alvin Kamara was the hot hand. And you also got to look at the schedule. The front four schedule is the toughest part, okay?
True.
After this, they got the Bucs next week. That's when you can probably give Latavius Murray a lot more work next week. So you against the Cowboys, I would expect some kind of output like this again. I saw a fantastic stat after the game that Alvin Kamara, when he gets 20 or more touches per game, the Saints are 8-0 in his career, which is a wild stat there. So almost it's like you're guaranteed to win when he touches the ball 20-plus times. So I expect him to get that same amount of touches this week. I think it's a smart move. Maybe Murray, if Murray does get into a groove, he just didn't get in a groove last Sunday.
And he's the type of back I think that needs touches to get into a groove.
Right. So it might all change. You can dictate and say right now, he should get this and that. But if Murray's not in a groove like he was last week, and Kamara is, just roll with the hot hand. But if Murray first one gets 5 yards, all right, go with him again there. I feel sometimes people get so warped on the touches that they have. You just gotta go in the flow of the game. I'm sure Sean Payton doesn't know.
Right.
Maybe at halftime he knows he can figure that out. But next week they're playing the Bucs. Then they're playing the Jags. Yeah. Then the Bears. Well, the Bears, that's a brutal opponent. But at least next week you can maybe give them a little respite.
Go ahead.
I think the matchups dictate who you're going to ride with. And not only is Kamara your bell cow and your most talented player in every aspect of the word as a receiver and as a running back, but I think one of the things to point out was Murray probably got lost in the mix a little bit last week because I thought Seattle's front four, and I still think Seattle's front four is one of the better ones in the NFL. And I think you had to find a way to be able to get a running back in space. And one of the best things that Kamara does, probably better than almost any running back out there, is his screen game and the way he's able to be a receiver. I think he's just as good of a receiver as he is a running back. And it really wouldn't surprise me if at the end of the year he's one of those guys who's a 1,000-yard rusher and receiver because he's just that talented. But I think the game plan dictated that more than anything.
So do I. Guys, the one negative has really been the penalties on the offense, especially the offensive line. Offensive line, for the most part, is healthy. Again, you brought in a new center in terms of McCoy, but it doesn't seem like they seem like they're working together. But you can't continue to kill drives, especially when you're bringing a guy like Bridgewater, who's really not again as adapt to the offense as maybe a Breeze is, and continue to really shoot yourself in the foot with these penalties. They got to clean this up.
Yeah, well, 6 offensive holding penalties against the Rams, but you're going against Aaron Donald. Yeah. But that first drive was a killer for the Saints there. Every time Teddy was completing passes, they kept having penalties. Maybe it's just McCoy's a rookie, get them all together. At least the injury problem, though, Will Clapp, I think, was also did not practice again today.
Hand injury, right?
Yeah, on the injury report. So that's going to hurt because they used him on the outside when they used 6 blockers. But I just think it's 2 games, 3 games in the talent level. You also got to look at that, man. They're going against the J.J. Watts, the Aaron Donalds. Though I will say this. We made such a big deal about Jadeveon Clowney.
Right.
Dude, it didn't hit me till Monday that he played in that game. He was in that game.
Manchek shut him down.
Yeah, and we got so worked up that they were that you avoided him in week 1, but you're going to see him in week 3. I totally forgot he was in the game.
Right.
So some of the guys are showing up, but as a unit, they're still making some mistakes.
Is this still about cohesion? Is it just like as Garland saying, the talent level they're playing against?
I think it's probably been a little bit of cohesion. I will say, though, against the Rams, that was one of the worst offensive line performances that I've seen the Saints offensive line have since the Dallas game. And so, look, going into this matchup against the Cowboys, you're going to be stressed along that defensive line. And DeMarcus Lawrence off the edge is going to be one of the best edge rushers that you'll find in the NFL. So they're going to be tested again. Ramczyk will be tested again. Teron Armstead's going to be tested again. I thought the thing that concerned me the most out of that performance against the Rams was that every single offensive lineman starter was flagged for a penalty. And you're right. You just can't have that whenever it seemed like every play that Teddy Bridgewater made that was a positive gain, and there were some big chunk plays in that game, especially the first drive that he came in where it seemed like there were They'd already gotten backed up, and it was like 2nd and 20. They picked up a first down. It was like 3rd and 25 or something like that, and they had enough to almost pick up a first down, and it just seemed like it just kept moving them back because of all the penalties. So that can throw off the rhythm of a quarterback who's already got enough to worry about, given the playbook that's being thrown at him and what he's got to figure out in a short period of time. So you got to play clean when you got to back up, especially a quarterback coming in like that under these circumstances.
Right. Andrew, both you and Garland were at camp, almost every single day, saw almost every single practice. Can you make heads or tails on what happened with Jared Cook?
I knew you know what? I knew you were to ask me that. I knew it. I could feel it. I could see the faces.
Everything I heard about him during training camp was this guy is going to be spectacular. Second coming of Jimmy Graham, and again, he has laid an egg the first 3 weeks.
I knew you were going to ask me. I could tell that. I know where you're going with this because you're right. During camp, he was balling out every day. I don't play fantasy football.
Right.
I just got enough. I got too much on my plate. I do Survivor every week, but that's about it. I don't do fantasy football. But I told all my friends that are, I'm like, dude, Jared Cook is killing it every day in camp. I will say this: the drop pass he had at Seattle. I'm not putting that all on him.
Yeah.
I know he was
a little behind him.
He was a little behind him on that one, but other than that, he had a good rapport with Drew. So now it's like going back to square one with Teddy there. So that's going to be interesting. But yet. That is the biggest surprise so far in this season because I watching him in training camp every single day he was killing it, man.
What would you take?
I am going to put the drop pass on him against Seattle. I thought that was a back shoulder throw that he's got to make a catch on every time. So I think that Garland, I would agree with him from the standpoint that you've now got to figure out a rapport with a whole new quarterback. And to be fair to him, it was really only a full game that we've seen between him and Drew Brees where he didn't really pop out against the Houston Texans. And what Brees was knocked out in the second quarter of that game against the Rams. So it's still a small sample size. But given the fact that we were touting him so much coming into the season and the impact that he would have, it is a little bit concerning, especially when you have a wide receiver core that's already pretty thin. And we'll see what the deal is with Traquan Smith moving forward. Keith Kirkwood obviously is already on IR. So it's become a precarious situation for Saints receiving threats. And you'd like to see, as the weeks go on with Bridgewater, him become more of a viable threat.
Yeah, I would agree. Talk about the Brees injury. He'll be here this week. Couldn't travel to Seattle because of the surgery. They didn't want to put him in a plane with the swelling. But he's going to be here. He's going to have the earpiece in. I'll say this, and not a knock against Brees, but when the camera went on Brees in the game that he was knocked out against the Rams, it seemed to be didn't seem to be really engaged with Teddy Bridgewater on the sidelines. I knew he knew the play was going because he was talking to whoever was calling the plays or was at least involved in it. He has said he's going to be intimately involved this week. How big is that?
I think that's huge. And I think that when you look back to that Rams game, though, him sitting on the sideline and being upset.
Almost like brooding.
I think it was because, and he said it after the game, that this felt a little bit more significant than just jamming your thumb.
Right.
And so I think that's just boiling over him, over him the whole time that he's on the sideline. That, man, I'm probably going to have to miss some significant time here. And this is a team that we feel like can make a run at a Super Bowl. And now you probably feel like if I'm out several weeks, even though we brought Teddy Bridgewater here to be the most expensive backup to be able to keep us afloat, man, are we going to have to go on the road to start the playoffs if we drop a couple of games here? But I think he'll be able to help an extreme amount, and I think you'll see him on the sideline being able to give Teddy Bridgewater all types of tips and positivity that he can on the sideline. And Teddy Bridgewater said after this past game too that the tips that Brees has given him are completions are good, man. Just put those athletes in space, get the ball to them, and let them go do their thing. And so I think the interesting thing as far as Brees was concerned today that we saw is that the guesstimate is that he's going to be out at least about 6 weeks, potentially 8. But you do have that bye week before the Atlanta game in Week 9. Which, if you're able to get to that point, you'd be gravy, and he'll have an extra week to be able to rest up. Yes. But he thinks he's going to be back sooner than 6 weeks. But I would say, depending on how these next few weeks play out and how many games that you're able to win, which there's some winnable games that seem like ahead, ease him in.
Right,
Don't let him rush back.
Right.
Don't and of course that's relative to how those games play out, though.
Same questions, please.
Yeah, I think he was just freaking out. Like, he was just in shock.
Right.
I mean, he was only missed one game because of the injury with the Saints, and that was in 2015. I think he just saw his whole season flash in front of him, and it just completely took over his whole. I mean, he tried to pick up a ball.
Right.
You build up for this game,
right,
and you can't even pick up a ball. I think he was just in shock.
Yes.
I really think you could tell on the sideline after the game how depressed you could tell he was. I think he was in shock. Now he's accepted it. He knows what his rehab is. That's part of the probably main part of it. He knows that he's coming back. I think that there was a general fear when he couldn't pick up a ball that this was it.
Right.
Like he wasn't playing for this team this year. I'm sure he thought that in his mind. He knew the injury was serious. Now he knows that there's a timeline of when he's going to return. He's going to be back this year. Now that he's accepted that, I think he's going to be a vital part of being in this offense, being in Teddy's ear, seeing things. Right. I mean, Sean Payton's reading the plays. I know they got the eye in the sky, but there's something that Drew can see. He went against his team last year, so he knows what's up. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a totally different than what happened in L.A.
And how about the rehab? Because, again, as Andrew said, he's saying he thinks he's going to be able to beat that timeline. I mean, you only heal so fast. And wait a minute, Drew, you're 40 years old. Come on.
Well, I will say this. What if they just go on like this win streak?
Right.
Okay, if they happen to beat the Cowboys at home, which I know the Cowboys are 2.5-point favorites right now, then they go to Jackson. I mean, they got Tampa at home. That looks like a win. Tampa Bay is not a good team at all.
Right.
Then you got Jacksonville. Then you got Chicago. Those are all winnable games. If you go on like a hot run right now, then don't push them back to.
It's kind of like the same thing with Rankins, right? You don't want to push Rankins right now. Defensive line's playing pretty well. You'd like to get him back. But because of the injury, you don't want to force him back if you don't have to. Kind of want to take your time, especially after what happened to Neal, the defensive back in Atlanta last week, where, again, the hamstring is torn again, and he's gone for the year.
Yeah, no question. You certainly don't want to rush him back. I will say, just to play devil's advocate, though, Jameis Winston played a lot better last week. So, the game looks a little bit tougher than it might have been, although you do have your home crowd behind you. And then Gardner Minshew's been an animal for Jacksonville, filling in for Nick Foles, which has been pretty unbelievable. But, yeah, I would just say relative to how these games play out, how many wins you're able to get, then you can assess, okay, we're playing with a little bit of house money. Maybe we can wait a little bit longer. But, look, from the get-go, no matter what Breeze says, I'm looking at that bye week before Atlanta. I said he'll have a solid 8 weeks to be able to recover. And if we're playing well, you need him for the long haul, because I thought at the end of last year, whether Breeze is going to admit it or not, and I know that the offensive line was deteriorating a little bit and getting banged up and playing bad from that Dallas game on, Breeze could not throw the ball downfield the same way. He wasn't as efficient, and age is going to catch up with you eventually. And so maybe that could be the little silver lining as a part of this, is that he's not going to have as many games and the grind of an NFL season while he's rehabbing. The rest of his body is going to be fresh. He's going to be able to come back, and he's going to be able to play into the playoffs and feel like he's 35 instead of feeling like he's 40.
There you go. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll hear from our underwriters. We come back, we'll talk a little bit about the defense. We'll get into the Dallas game. Then we'll get into Tulane and LSU. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Garland, Gillen of Fox 8 Sports. Andrew Doak of Channel 4 Sports. I'm Eric Astor, your host. Don't go anywhere.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Andrew Doak of Channel 4 Sports, Garland, Gillen of Fox 8 Sports are our guests. Guys, let's talk about a little bit about the defense. Boy, rushing the passer, they have done really well. I was a little critical of them in Game 1, the inability to get pressure with 4 down linemen. They've proven they can do it any way they want. 4 down linemen, bring stunt, bring linebackers, bring safeties. That's been good to see. The linebackers, for the most part, I think have played pretty well. You miss Anzalone and his athleticism. It's the secondary right now that is really kind of head-scratching with this team right now, especially a guy like Lattimore, who is, again, a lot of people believe is one of the best corners in the league. You know, the maturation process of Marcus Williams is not there. Von Bell's been playing out of sight. And then, of course, look, we saw Eli Apple come in and kind of, again, really kind of take over that opposite cornerback spot and do a pretty fair job last year. They've got off to a really slow start. Now, look, they played against some pretty good offenses as well, but they've got off to a pretty slow start in the secondary.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Marcus Williams to to get back to that form of his rookie year. It hasn't been a strong building of the last few years for Marcus Williams. Eli Apple, man, it's just stay away from social media because, man, they just crush Eli. At least he had that fumble return for a touchdown there. I kind of calmed down a little because I know Eli's mother got into it on Twitter with some fans in Game 1 against the Texans there. But yeah, Von Bell's, he's just playing out his mind. But Lattimore, I think, has given up the most yards as a corner this season. He's given up some big ones there, which is
it's the explosive plays that are really hurting the secondary.
Yeah, and it's hard to understand because I know we talked about Jared Cook on offense. Marshawn Lattimore had a good camp. There was one day where he was just shutting down Michael Thomas, and that one's a head scratcher. He needs to start heating it up because it's contract time coming soon there. Eli Apple's in the last year of his deal. That's going to be an intriguing one to see if he's around.
And for him, I think it depends on how they're officiating the game. He is a grabby corner. So if you got the officials that are allowing, them to play and do a little hand fighting on the outside, he's going to excel. If you got somebody that's calling it straight up from the book, he's not going to excel. He's going to get flag after flag.
Yeah, and you mentioned the explosive plays. I mean, that game against the Rams, he gave up the 50-plus yarder to Brandon Cooks. He gave up the only receiving touchdown to Brandon Cooks. And then he gave up what was a 60-plus yard touchdown to Cooper Kupp that then was called back to the 1 before they ended up scoring a touchdown. So you're right. It's been the explosive plays. And I wonder how much it has to do with the relationship between him and Marcus Williams and whose responsibility is kind of being surrendered at certain moments. I can't imagine that Dennis Allen would ever really disclose that information to us. But those two, I think, play a role that because Marcus Williams has also not gotten back to his rookie year form, neither has Marshawn Lattimore, and how much are they putting Lattimore on an island and how much is he not getting safety help plays into it. But I thought the defensive line has been exceptional so far this year, and I thought it was one of their best performances against Seattle. Cam Jordan right now has 16 hurries on the year. That leads all defensive ends and any player in the NFL that's an edge rusher. So he's off to a spectacular year. He had 11 hurries last week against Seattle. And I think those numbers probably aren't dived into enough because they affect the passer sometimes just as much as sacks. And I know the sexy statistic is the sack. But he's affecting the passer. And actually, I found this really interesting too. Look, the most picked apart player on this Saints roster is Marcus Davenport. And I understand why, but he's also really high up there in hurries. He has 10 on the year. That's
playing well.
That's 10th in the NFL right now. So while you haven't seen the big sack numbers from someone like Marcus Davenport right now, he's affecting the passer on a high percentage of his plays compared to the rest of the NFL. So continue to give this guy time and give him some slack because defensive linemen and offensive linemen sometimes their performance isn't reflected in the box score, and that's the difficult thing.
Guys, I do have a little bit of issue from a scheme standpoint. You could get away with Anzalone on a wide receiver because of his athleticism in a short field. Last week I counted 4 times Klein had to cover a wide receiver. That is a losing proposition every day, all day. From a scheme standpoint, Allen's got to figure this out. You got players running through zones, making it very difficult, sitting in a zone, getting wide open. They got to tighten up the zone defense as well.
Well, I think this week you got Ezekiel and Amari Cooper. Right. Luckily for them, Michael Gallup is out for a few. He's not going to be there on Sunday. You're right. The defense right now hasn't it showed up, well, against the Texans, it did its job, and not the best work they did, but obviously against the Rams, they got roughed up. Those Seahawks numbers, a lot of that came in the fourth quarter. That's deceiving numbers, right. But it's the same thing. I think it's also injuries. With losing Anzalone, now you lost Caden Ellis. Blast from the past yesterday. I really thought when Ian Rappaport tweeted that Stephon Anthony was coming back, I had to make sure the blue check mark was on his Twitter feed because I thought. But then you found out that they're going to need special teams help because you think Kiko Alonso.
He was a good special teams player, though.
Well, and Kiko Alonso, it looks like he's going to get more work at linebacker, and he's got some speed. So maybe this is going to be intriguing to see if Alonso how much work he gets this week.
Let's talk a little bit about Dallas. I'm going to take you first, Andrew. You know a lot about the Cowboys. Look, last year they had a perfect game plan for the Saints. They tried to take Thomas and Kamara out of the game. You look at their linebackers, Van Der Esch, Smith, Lee. That's three of the fastest, most athletic linebackers in the league. You look again at what they're doing up front with Lawrence, Quinn, Woods, and Collins. They're tough up front. Secondary is not bad. Byron Jones did a great job last year against the Saints. Talk about this Dallas defense. That's a formidable defense the Saints are going up against.
No question about it. And they're going to be able to bring pressure against the Saints offense with just 4 down linemen, and they're going to mix it up. They're going to bring exotic looks, and they're going to be able to have a lot of different blitz packages to be able to throw Bridgewater off of his game. And then Byron Jones is a great corner who's continued to have building blocks throughout his career there. Their secondary is a lot better than it has been in years past. And look, that defense from top to bottom is consistently become one of the better units in football. And they're going to challenge the Saints offense, and you're just going to have to find creative ways to be able to get your players in space, get Kamara, get Tom. And honestly, I'd like to see Thomas be able to get more involved because, I know his rapport is still growing with Teddy Bridgewater, but they got to find creative ways to be able to get him the ball as well. And whether that's utilizing more screen passes with him in the middle of the field rather than just in red zone areas, maybe you got to find ways to implement that too. But he was, even though I thought he had an impact in that game in Seattle, I thought between the 20s, he was someone who kind of got lost in the mix a little bit. And so Dallas's defense is gonna challenge you. And that team in general, the way that their offense is playing, this is going to be, I don't know if I want to say this is a litmus test for them right now because Drew Brees isn't with this team, but they're going to be one of those contenders at the end of the year in the NFC, the way they're playing.
I would say this, and I want you to comment on their defense. I think the Saints have to challenge this defense this week. Last year, they tried to take Thomas and Kamara out of the game. They got nothing from anybody else. Whether it's Ginn, whether it's Carr, whether it's Cook. We don't think that Traquan Smith's going to be available because of the injury. I think they got to take some shots. I think they got to open this thing up and let Teddy again air it out. I don't think you can allow Dallas to put too many players and load the box up. It's going to be a challenge for Bridgewater. I don't think you'll get away with this week dinking and dunking against the Dallas defense.
Yeah, and the Cowboys are 3-0. They're favored. Right. The other thing that is intriguing to me, you talked about litmus test of defense. I still don't really know what the Cowboys are about. I mean, you beat 3 teams with one win
Washington,
combined.
Giants, and Dolphins.
That is very unimpressive. But you got to play who's on the schedule.
Sure.
Okay, I know. The same thing with
But they're not battle tested. When you look at the Saints schedule and who they played, that's battle tested.
Right. But I think with Bridgewater, you're right. He's going to have to go downfield. He averaged 1.7 yards, 1.7 yards a throw. So obviously,
not with the speed of the linebackers for Dallas. Even though again, the Seahawks had great linebackers as well.
Right. But you're definitely have to see something different this week. And you know what? That worked. Peyton saw what worked against Seattle, and obviously he's going to do something different this week there. But you always give him a week. I always say he's one of the best at picking a scheme against this team.
Right. Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, and look, that offensive line. One thing Jerry Jones did, he realized if he's going to get back to a championship contender, he had to build his lines up. He did it. Defense, offensive line, they put a lot of money into it.
Yeah, their offensive line, I thought last year, I think some injuries kind of, tripped them up. And I was thinking maybe they were falling to be one of those, top elite offensive lines to kind of more middle of the road. But they're back to where they were a couple of years ago. And I think Zeke is still just getting going right now. He's someone who still has yet to find his rhythm. And we know about the holdout and him being in Cabo and whatnot. And so he's probably still trying to get his sea legs under him. But, that's one of the intriguing matchups inside the game is, what you're going to get from Kamara and what you're going to get from someone like Zeke. But I'm with you. I think they got to be able to take some shots down the field with Teddy Bridgewater because they've opened this offense up under Dak Prescott, and Kellen Moore, who's their first-year offensive coordinator, is showing, even though the competition isn't exactly on par with some of the rest of the league, they've shown that they're not afraid to let Dak Prescott loose and have him challenge people down the field. And Amari Cooper, a lot of people were saying, man, they shouldn't have given up a first-round pick for this guy, coming from Oakland, but now it's looked like that was worth every bit of the first-round pick.
Yeah, well, the good news is, and I'm sorry, Andrew, Louisiana's own the Lone Star State. LSU, Tulane, and Saints undefeated. Hopefully that will continue this weekend.
Oh, you threw a Tulane there.
Yeah, got to throw Tulane
next.
Because we're going Tulane next. You're an AP voter. And from what we understand, you voted for Tulane in the AP. Tulane got 9 votes in the coaches poll. They're 3-1, 38-31 winner over Houston on ESPN, the entire country watching, and again, dramatic fashion. It's incredible what Willie Fritz has done in turning this program around. It sputtered a bit for a while there, but it looks like they're on the right track.
Yeah, the game was so dramatic, it ended Houston's season after 4 games. Yes. I mean, they're shutting it down. D'Eriq King, that is one of the wildest stories I've seen in college football in a long time.
That's abusing the rule.
Yeah, it is. Though, if it wasn't for that rule, Jalen McCluskey wouldn't have caught that winning touchdown catch. He pulled the same thing at Oklahoma State last year. Played 4 games and redshirted. This team, I thought they were going to be 7-5, 8-4. I didn't know how they were going to get to that number, but you're starting to see a path now. They have a bye this week. It's a good reason. It's a good thing to have a bye because they're playing Army, which is a really tough team to prepare for. Obviously, Michigan had a ton of problems going on against Army. Army's 2-1 right now. So Willie Fritz, you saw it every year. 4 wins, 5 wins. Got 6 in the regular season, then got the 7th in the bowl game. They're a hot commodity right now, and Will Hall is. I mean, they call it the knee was the official. It's not fumble roost. They call it the knee play, and then just going out and going after it, man. Making Justin Millen a stronger passer. It's really fun covering this team. And that I will say this though, Tulane fans are really happy. I had to go. I did a live shot at 5:45. Then I had to go cover high school football.
Right.
I came back. I was walking back to the stadium at 28-7.
Yes.
Okay, I parked in the lot right behind. There was a lot of fans leaving at 28-7 when I got into that stadium. They scored right when I got in there, make it 28-14. So Tulane fans, they still need to show it, okay? There was a lot of empty seats in that place. I saw a lot of people leaving when it was 28-7. So, but be happy. They're 3-1. But Green Wave fans, you need to show a little more support because I saw a lot of them leaving. There was a lot of empty seats there.
No, I agree with you. I called it the most defining win of the Fritz era. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. It's still early in the season, and I know Washington State, Houston coming in was 1-2, had losses to Washington State and Oklahoma.
Traditionally.
No, they have. And, I think that what impressed me most was, you look back to the matchup last year against Houston. D'Eriq King doesn't even play that whole game. They had the backup in for most of the game, and, they got down early, and, Tulane teams of the past have wilted. And they wilted last year against the Cougars. And when you get in that 28-7 hole, that was the first thing that my mind went to was, man, Houston was a 5-point underdog coming into this game. Like that's why you take the points in a game like this, given their history against them. But I thought the mental fortitude to be down 28-7, to come back in that game. I think offensively, I know the fireworks kind of stole the show at the end of the game, and defensively, they obviously put them in that hole, but to give up 28 points in the first 17 minutes or whatever it was, quarter and a half, and then hold Houston to just 3 points the rest of the way was kind of the lost story in all of that, to be able to give them a chance to come back. I think the one thing that concerns me a little bit with Tulane's offense and Justin McMillan is they've shown the ability to have that home run threat, and they have the ability to push the ball down the field, but putting together some of those methodical drives, those 10, 11-play drives where you're able to manage it down the field and be able to give your defense a little bit of a break on the sideline, that's something that they even had problems with back to last year, and it seems like they're struggling with a little bit this year. And I know we're picking apart what was a great win, but offensively, I think the passing efficiency, if you will, because McMillan finished like 7 for 20.
That's what he was
in that game, and 3 of those passes were for touchdowns. There were a lot of plays during that game where there were easy screen passes or slants where it just didn't seem like he was 100% focused and missed out on those throws, ones that you got to make 100 times out of 100. Yeah. So we got to see a little bit more of that moving forward.
Penalties have been an issue for them as well.
Yeah.
They got to clean the penalties up. What surprised me was the conditioning. I didn't realize that that Houston had played like 3 games in 19 days, but I think it was Tulane had played 3 games in like 24 days, right? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't that far off. Both of them are in the deep south. Both of them are practicing pretty much. Houston's weather is our weather for the most part. Right. But Tulane was much more of a conditioned team. You saw the Houston team. Their tongues were hanging out. I will say this: you talk about Army. Jeffrey Johnson has got to get back. He got injured at the end of that game. He is a real key for that defensive line. I talk to some people that cover Tulane all the time, and they're telling me, look, Gary Smith is the guy. He tells me, look, they're deep there, but that guy is just huge. He anchors the middle of that defense. Playing up against that Army triple option, you're going to have him in the game. Yeah,
and you bring up Army. I got to make one point about the biggest win in the Fritz era, that Army game last year.
Yes, it was.
Because you look at Troy Danon tires. Travis Jewett is a miss. Mm-hmm. Mike Dunleavy was a miss.
Yes.
He needed Willie Fritz to win. He needed a winner. And that game last year when they beat Army to qualify for a bowl game, that might have been a bigger win than the Houston game because for the culture, if they would have gone 3 seasons without making a bowl, Troy Danon needed that win because he is hired. It made some bad hires. Now, we'll say this, Ron Hunter might be a good hire in basketball.
Sure,
but so far, he's batting 333 right now. But you're right, Army. The Army's wins are against UTSA and Rice, and the Rice is by a touchdown. So I feel like Army's playing down to their competition and playing up for Michigan. So it's going to be intriguing to see, given how much time Tulane had off, and that game is at 11 in the morning on the East Coast. Man, that's going to be a brutal time for Tulane.
Yeah, I would agree. Let's grab some calls. Greg is in Houma. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys. The Cowboys in the Saints game. I got a comment and kind of like.
Could you turn him up a little bit, please?
I don't think that we're going to lose this game because Sean Payton and Dennis Allen. I mean, think about who they're going up against. Kellen Moore, who's like 20 years old. I mean, they're going to throw stuff at Kellen Moore that he's never seen before. Dennis Allen really has to step up his game and hopefully the coaching is sort of in our favor. And I'll hang up and listen.
Okay, guys, coaching.
Yeah, I like the Kellen Moore's 20 years old. I don't know if Andrew heard it was kind of low, but yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people said the same thing about Sean McVay, and then guess what? He led the Rams to a Super Bowl. Too. So, and a lot of people said about Sean Payton. Right. So, look, a lot of young coaches out there are getting shots and getting opportunities much more than they used to. And even though it's really early, being someone who followed the Cowboys for a long time, it showed that Scott Linehan, who was their offensive coordinator last year and came from Detroit, he didn't really know what he was doing. The ability that Kellen Moore has shown to be able to trust Dak Prescott to push it down the field, I mean, he's someone who's helping him earn a $35 million a year contract probably after this season. So I think when you look back to last week, though, against Pete Carroll, I thought Sean Payton outcoached Pete Carroll straight up. I mean, you look at the end of the half, there was a sequence where they had 2 timeouts.
Yeah.
They didn't use one of them. They ended up with a big play from Wilson to DK Metcalf, and then time expired, and they didn't have the ability to set up what would have been a chip shot field goal. So, Payton is definitely one of the better coaches out there in the NFL, and he has a way to be able to scheme things up and outcoach other guys. And I would say he's certainly a better coach than Jason Garrett. That's why there's been rumors for a long time that he would, replace him.
To bed, right?
Yeah, would replace him in Dallas. But look, Sean Payton was once that same guy, so don't go into that game and just discount him too much.
Yeah, and Pete Carroll had a bad day, from the football one to the nose.
Breaking his nose and everything.
It just wasn't his day, that's for sure. Hal is in West Wego. Hal, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Hal.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Hal.
We've all seen videos with Alvin Kamara standing on the exercise ball, catching all those things that his trainer is throwing at him. And so to me, he's like set the standard for tweaking personal training. And so on the field, he looks like a wizard. Now, so what I'm wondering is, do coaches even talk about to you all whether or not they're kind of nudging their players to do a little extra, stuff like that? Right. Or do they just say, well, no, we practice and they show up for work and that's it?
Okay, thanks. A lot of these guys have personal trainers now, right?
Everybody does, and I know he's talking about. The ball. Colt Coletti was his trainer. Also played running back at John Curtis and at Nichols. Pulling the Jeep.
Yes.
So Alvin's experimenting with a lot of things, and obviously they're all working. every time I talk about Alvin Kamara to people that are like Tennessee Vol fans, they're still dumbfounded that Butch Jones didn't use more. I'm like, dude, Saints fans need to see Butch Jones some bouquets, because not only did he spare him from a lot of tread on the tire, I mean, he's got a ton of tread on the tire now because they barely used him. And with him not using that much, he stayed down to the third round, because if he used him a lot, he might have been in the first round. Right. So Tennessee Vol fans, thank you for bringing him that way.
Can you add anything?
Well, I think that the point that Garland made, I think that's an underrated fact, is that some guys get run into the ground at the college level because they rely on him so much. And maybe even somebody like Leonard Fournette could be pointed to and say, man, we relied on him too much, and that hurt his professional career. I think there's also some God-given ability that comes with Alvin Kamara and the ability that he has that's just unique. And obviously it's unfortunate for Tennessee that Butch Jones wasn't able to realize that. But, I mean, I've asked him after the game before, like, do you feel like the workouts that you do on the Bosu ball where trust me, if you hop on a Bosu ball, that thing's a lot tougher to stand on and have people throw you stuff and try to catch it than people recognize. But his balance, I think, is, up there with some of the best that we've ever seen at the NFL level, truly.
Who you can compare him with, and I don't know if you can compare him. Some will say Barry Sanders, but I don't think there's a player out there you can compare Kamara to.
No, he's one of a kind, man. And now that Saquon Barkley is out for 4 to 8 weeks, active running back right now, he might be number one in the NFL, man, because Todd Gurley's making that kind of big money. Yeah. And obviously he's got some issues right now. Melvin Gordon's coming back. But I know Ezekiel this week, he's up there. Zeke got his contract. I know Kamara's loving these contracts right now. Yeah. I'm sure he wanted Melvin Gordon to get that new contract. Maybe Gordon will get it now.
All you got to do is watch Ballers on Sunday night, right?
Yeah. I think the only running back that's in the league that you can compare him to, based on his skill set and what he does, is Christian McCaffrey. Yeah. That's just someone who receiving and rushing creates the same type of threat, but.
But not the same balance
No, his ability is different, and his ceiling, I think, is higher than most running backs we've seen in a long time.
Andrew, let's talk about LSU, 66-38 winners over Vandy. AP poll their 4, coaches poll their 5. The big story this year has been the offense. Talk a bit about it.
Well, Joe Brady's going to, get scooped up by somebody eventually with what he's brought to this offense.
If they let him out the door.
If they ever let him out the door, and we'll see how that develops over the next couple of years between him and Steve Ensminger. But, they've certainly cut it loose, and it's been fun to watch. And, look, they're number 1 in the country in scoring offense right now. They're top 5 in total offense. Joe Burrow looks like a Heisman candidate based on how he's played. And, I think out of the Heisman candidates, he probably has the best win on his resume, in comparison to Trevor Lawrence and Tua and Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma. So I really was skeptical of if they really would commit to it, because it seemed like in years past, not only the talent offensively as far as diagramming plays probably wasn't there, but also their conviction to really commit to it. And this season they've committed to it, and I think. Lost in all of this also, and I know Burrow gets so many of the headlines, but man, this receiving core is serious. Yeah. And lost a little bit of shine losing Terrace Marshall, who was up there near the top as far as receiving touchdowns were concerned. But Rummel's Jamar Chase is a man amongst boys, man. That guy, some of those pass catches that he made, even at Vandy, there was one where and Texas, he made some man catches where just in one-on-one coverage, it was a jump ball, and he goes out there and manhandles you. And, Destrehan's Justin Jefferson is right behind him. I think he's still Burrow's most reliable target that he's comfortable with. And the offensive line has been formidable enough where they've just been able to, let him get the ball out quick. And they've done that, having to battle through injuries through the early part of the year, too. So they've been explosive, and it looks like, from what we've seen early so far, they've gone over 40 points every game and over 50 the rest of that, and even gone over 60 twice now. They're going to be able to hang with Alabama, it seems like, offensively early right now, at least from what we've seen.
I had to apologize to Joe Burrow on air, because when he made that comment at Nichols over the Manning-Pass County, I said he had heat stroke, okay?
40, 50, 60
right, 40, 50, 60.
Right.
He's been right on, right?
He has. He's talked the talk, and he loves to talk. Talking smack to the Vanderbilt guys. I don't know how you don't like Joe Burrow. He's 17 touchdown passes this year. He's got the confidence. I said before the season I thought LSU was going to go 11-1. I think I even went on your show and said that. I know on our show Overtime that airs on Tuesday night, I said it like 5 different times this year. I still think that way. I don't know. I don't think Florida can go in and beat LSU. Auburn, I'm still intrigued to see what they have because the Knicks only threw for 100 yards at A&M. Auburn's going to Florida in 2 weeks. Or a week and a half. I can't wait to watch that game. But right now, I still think that Alabama's the only team that stands in their way of getting the SEC championship. I still think they're an 11-1 team.
They got to clean the defense up, though. I mean, again, I understand, being on the field with, again, this high-powered offense, but the missing of the tackles, not fulfilling the assignments. You can blame it a little bit on injuries here because you lost some really good players. Hopefully they'll be back for SEC play. But this is not the same LSU defense we're accustomed to.
I don't know if it's the same defense, but I also feel like there's a lot of the fan base who hasn't experienced what this up-tempo offense does to you defensively.
Right. And you saw it at Texas Tech, right?
And I saw it at Texas Tech, and of course they historically, my alma mater does not have a great defense. We all know that. But going and playing against Texas, I saw a lot of people after the game who were upset about the defense.
Because we're used to seeing good defense.
And you're used to seeing good defense.
From LSU.
Guess what? That opponent was pretty good too.
Sure.
Like at the end of the day, I think it has to do with sometimes your opponent as well. And you look back to this game against Vandy, there were 2 defensive touchdowns that were scored by Vandy that added to what looked like the offensive box score at the end of the game. You're down Rashard Lawrence and Glenn Logan. Michael Divinity doesn't make it through the whole game. Kayvon Chason doesn't play that game. Todd Harris gets lost for the year. So you're dealing with a lot right now. And I just think that they're going to have to figure out between defensive coordinator Dave Aranda, Joe Brady, and Steve Ensminger, what works well that is mutually beneficial to both of us. Because when you score in 2.5 minutes and you're putting the defense right back out there, that's tough for anybody. So they've got to find a way to be able to balance that. But Ed Orgeron probably is sitting there and says, I also don't want to throw the rhythm off of my offense because then what am I sitting there with 2 units that are out of rhythm and out of sync? I think right now you're happy with how much you're scoring. And as the season goes along and people get more accustomed to this style of play, they'll figure out how to get some of those kinks out. But the verdict is still out for me. And look, if this offense takes away from your defense a little bit, but it helps you beat Alabama, I'm not going to see anybody whining after that game.
Garland, got a minute left. You get the final word on the D.
Yeah, at least Divinity is not a serious injury, but I think it's just that they need to get Chase on back, they need to get Lawrence back, and they need to get Logan back. Once they get those guys back in the fold, they got a week to heal those wounds. You got Utah State. That's going to be a tough one for LSU, too. 11 in the morning. Utah State is not a chump program. They made a bowl game last year. That's going to be a tough one. But everything's set up for them right now. I think they're going to figure it out. That offense is just and they got Ingram back.
Yeah.
That's a huge.
That's going to be huge for them.
That's going to be a big one because I think they're still trying to figure out what they got on that offensive line.
Yeah, I would agree. And look, I didn't mention it, but I want to mention it because I glazed over it. Got to give some props to the Saints special teams, Morstead, Harris, what they did in Seattle.
Morstead was the MVP in my opinion of that first
half.
There's
no doubt. Okay, we glazed over. That's my fault as a host. But again, they deserve all the props in the world for what they did.
Yeah, special teams player of the week, pinned him in twice within the 5-yard line. Yeah. Deontay Harris. Give it to the Saints scouting department to go find this guy at Assumption. I know Sean Payton admitted this week that it looked almost comical, how easy it was for Harris to score some of these touchdowns there. Man, Assumption's pumping out some studs, huh?
No,
between Cole Tracy and Deontay Harris.
Yeah. Keep the pipeline coming.
I need to pay attention at school a little more from now on.
Garland, Gillen of Fox 8 Sports, Andrew Doak of Channel 4 Sports, thanks for being with us tonight on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. You can also catch us statewide. That's Pelican Sports Television. That's 9 p.m. every Friday night. You can catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, and the iHeart Radio app. That's weekdays on noon until 2. Also, you listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. All the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports can also be seen at ericasher.com as well. I'll say thanks to to our guests tonight, to our underwriters, and to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.